Today on the DML News podcast, Kamala Harris going over to CNN for a very easy interview with her governor, Minnesota, wannabe vice president. It is going to be a joke. So get ready. We're going to talk about it today, and it's all unfiltered.
Dennis Michael Lynch gives you his word, and he will never let you down. He will always fight for America.
The only one who really puts his money where his mouth is Dennis Michael Lynch.
Hello, I'm Dennis Michael Lynch, and I thank you for joining me today. Dennis, my son, is across from me. Ryan, my son, is on the controls, and we are here with you live on Rumble and X. I think we're live on X as well. And, of course, we're always live on Team DML. I want to start off by saying to the thousands upon thousands of people who wished me a very happy birthday yesterday, I was blown away. In fact, I was not supposed to be on technology yesterday, but every 2 seconds a new email was coming in, and I was trying to respond to them all, and I want to say thank you for that very much. When I decided to get into news and politics, it really was more of news. I didn't do it on purpose. I was a consultant in Manhattan, and I was doing really, really well. And then 9/11 happened. And then when 9/11 happened, there was something about what I saw that changed everything for me in terms of what I wanted to do with my career and my time. And I started making documentaries because it was the only thing I knew I can do. I was okay with a camera. And it was an interesting topic of illegal immigration. Nobody else at the time was even covering it, let alone going down to the border. And I saw an opportunity, both from a business standpoint and from being able to define myself as a filmmaker, somebody who focused in on national security and illegal immigration. And it sort of tied back to my experience running from the Twin Towers. Along the way, I've learned more about the press and the media. I've learned enough to know that we are not accomplishing the job we were given. We're supposed to be the fourth estate. It is up to the media to hold those in power accountable because there is nobody else who can. At some point, the ladder stops. So who is going to be coming down, if you will, on the top dogs? Who's going to hold them responsible? Give an example of what I'm talking about. Yesterday, Jack Smith, the special prosecutor tied to the DOJ, has decided that he doesn't like what the Supreme Court had to say, and he doesn't like the fact that the Florida judge tossed out his case against Trump. So what did he do? He reworded his indictment and said it anew. So the question becomes, when is it that they will stop? What is going to finally get in front of the Biden administration, Kamala Harris, the DOJ, whatever? Who is going to stop them? You can't do it. I can't do it. The people can't do it. There's only one entity that can hold these people accountable, and that is the media. That's why the media was designed. Politicians, agencies, bureaucrats used to fear the media. And then there were certain people within that media they would fear even more. God forbid you were to sit down with a one-on-one interview. You know you were going to be asked the hard questions. You know, behind Denny, we have a picture. You see it whenever they go tight on him. You could flip to him, Ryan, if you want to. Behind Denny's left shoulder, you could see there's a gentleman there all the time. His name is John Rowland. And John Rowland was a sensational reporter and journalist out of New York City. He was Fox News New York. And what he taught me about media and journalism is that you got to ask the tough questions. You've got to try to get to the bottom. You've got to make people uncomfortable. And you can see when they're squirming. And when they're squirming, that's when you even press down harder. That's when you're going to get answers. His breed, my breed, people who believe that the media and journalism and news agencies aren't supposed to be the friends of politicians, aren't supposed to be the friends of the three-letter agencies. We are a rare breed We're dying off. Very soon, we will be dinosaurs. What we have instead is we have a media that looks to cushy up with these people, that looks to become friends with these people for a number of different reasons. Number one, deep inside, they feel protected. They could write anything they want. They could slam anybody they want. They can tell the truth or they can tell a lie. It won't matter at all, because if crap hits the fan, I just got to pick up the phone and call Joe Biden. He's going to make sure that all things are going to be okay. That's what resides in the back of these people's heads. So therefore, they go out and they do what I call propaganda work. They simply go to work each and every day trying to push their own ideology, their own beliefs, and the politicians and the agencies to which and who which they believe is going to further what they believe the country should be. Reporting the real news is not a thing anymore. You are going to see this tonight in full, blatant, disgusting, nauseating color. Dana Bash from CNN is going to sit down and do an interview with Kamala Harris, but Harris won't do it alone. Oh, no, 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 no. She needs the governor of Minnesota, also her running candidate, Mr. Comrade Tampon Tim, they call him. Mr. Walz is going to be with her. And the reason why is because Kamala Harris cannot and will not sit alone in a major interview as the nominee for the Democrat Party. They won't do it. She won't do it because she can't answer the questions. Look at what she's done in the last 2 weeks alone. Number one, she suddenly said she was going to wind up giving tax-free tips. No tax on tips. This is the same woman who, as vice president, just a year and a half ago with Joe Biden, put out a whole press release about how it is that the IRS was going to start to crack down on waiters and waitresses who make tips. Nobody in the media, nobody in the left media said, whoa, wait a second, that's a Trump plan. And why would you have a change of heart after you were hiring countless, 86,000 IRS agents or whatever the number was? What's the change of heart? Nobody asked the question, because at the same time as nobody's allowed to ask her the question. But if you were a real journalist and you were a real member of the media and you really wanted to be that fourth estate and hold their feet to the fire, you'd at least write articles in the New York Times and CNN and MSNBC. You would call out the White House that they have to address this new policy. Why is it that you're taking a Trump policy and changing what it is that you were pushing for a year and a half ago? It gets worse. Because Kamala Harris knows that she's able to do that without anybody except for maybe those at Fox News, Newsmax, and small outlets like us going after her, we don't have enough reach. We just don't have enough reach. So what does she do? She has the audacity to say that she's going to spend hundreds of millions of dollars, if president, on building a border wall. What? Nobody says anything to her. This is the border czar that has allowed the border to be wide open. This is the administration who's allowed more illegal immigration into this country than any presidency ever before. She owns half of that. And nobody in the media says a damn thing. Nobody on CNN, Anderson Cooper on CNN, doesn't sit there and start pulling his hair out of his head saying, who we have representing the Democrat Party here. They blow it over. They let it go. What's next for Kamala Harris? Is tonight on CNN going to be her debut of her new slogan, Make America Great Again? Is that the next thing she's coming up with? Is that what the press now is going to say? Oh, wow, that sounds good. Where'd you get that from? Where'd you borrow that from? Nobody is doing anything at all to hold these people accountable. If I was in front of Kamala Harris tonight and they said, well, you're only going to have 3 questions. The 3 questions I would ask her: 1, about the economy. What is her plan explicitly to lower the inflation that she created with Joe Biden? 2, how is she going to secure the border and get rid of the illegal aliens, including the gangs that she has allowed into this country by the numbers that are more than millions and millions and millions and millions than Trump let in. And then number 3, we have 2 wars right now, one in Ukraine, one in Israel, another one about to unfold somewhere between China and Taiwan. What will you do specifically to stop those from happening and continuing? She won't be asked these questions tonight. What she's going to get on CNN is a softball toss. Easy little questions like, Madam Vice President, what does it feel like when Donald J. Trump says that you're really not a black woman? You know? Governor Walz, what does it feel like when people are doubting the service that you paid to this nation as a National Guardsman? Do you think that it is wrong for people of MAGA to be saying something about your son and how you tugged his hand across the stage at the DNC? This is the sort of thing they'll do. And they'll throw in 1 or 2 little questions about the border and inflation. She'll say something like, you know, you have a new tax plan that's out. Some people are criticizing it because they don't think that it's going to do anything to stop the inflation. And then Kamala Harris will say, my tax plan is far better. When you look at 50 different experts who looked at our tax plan versus the Trump plan, they say that ours is going to be better long-term for the economy. That's the sort of empty BS answer you will see. We are in a load of trouble in this country, not only today, but long-term. We're not teaching our children anything worth substance anymore in the schools. We're not teaching anything in our universities other than how to be a pro-Palestinian, anti-Jew, anti-America student. And we certainly aren't teaching anything to our journalists. We're not teaching anything to our media companies, and we're not teaching anything to our influencers who are making a fortune online for the sake of talking about politics and never, ever holding anybody accountable at all. It is the worst thing I have ever seen taken shape from a media standpoint, and it is going to unfold on steroids tonight. Now, understand something. I'm going to play a video for you here in 2 seconds. It is a video of various voters, various demographics, various genders, all being asked a question, a very simple question. What has Kamala Harris done as the vice president of this country for 3.5, now going on 4 years? And you'll see the answers. Before I play the video, I want you to ask yourself, how are these people so misinformed? And the reason being is, A, because Kamala Harris has no accomplishments, and B, because the media never, ever highlights the bombs that she has blasted wide open across the United States. There's a bomb at the border. There's a bomb in inflation at your grocery store. There's a bomb everywhere. And it's ready to detonate on a worldwide basis if Kamala Harris is actually elected president of the United States. Remember, the people in this video are voting. Play it, Ryan.
What is Harris's biggest accomplishment to date as vice president?
I don't know. I don't feel comfortable doing this anymore.
She was vice president. She was a very good vice president.
That's an interesting question. Getting to vice president.
I have to do more research on her, honestly. I'm just glad to see a woman of color in charge for once. That's it.
I haven't followed her political career that closely.
That's a good one. I don't know. Yeah.
I don't want to do that.
You know, Dennis, when I see something like that, it scares the hell out of me because these people are going to go in and they're going to vote for Kamala Harris. All these people are paying the same dollar amount you and I are at the grocery store. They're paying the same dollar amount at the pump. I mean, who do they think at the end of the day is doing this stuff to us? And, you know, I saw a video this morning I should have given to Ryan for him to play because it's just mind-boggling. Ben Stiller, the actor, who has come out and said that he's going to, you know, he's so excited about the momentum behind Kamala Harris and he's supporting her and he's donating tons of money to her. And they asked why. Why are you so behind Kamala Harris? And you know what he said? It's time for change. Change? Isn't she the vice president of the United States? What is it that we're changing? And why are we going to be changing?
I think, what was it, 2-3 weeks ago? Same thing. Ben Stiller was on that Zoom call with all those celebrities claiming that every Jewish man wants to be a black man because reasons. It's very pandering, and it doesn't shock me because he is part of that Hollywood group that really just can't ever get to a high IQ level of giving actual good reasons to vote for someone. Like, I would have loved some pushback as to, hey, why are you really so against Trump? I mean, Trump, could help the economy. Trump can get things wrapped back up with manufacturing. There's just no answer. And that video you had just played with those, potential Kamala voters, that one lady, I believe she was Asian or maybe Filipina, she says directly, I need to do more research. I don't know what research you could possibly do or conclude at this point, but I think it's finally time for a woman of color to be in charge. That, in my opinion, and I think for most people's opinions, is not a good enough reason by any metric or by any means to vote for someone. By gender or by race is not a policy-making decision or a policy platform for that matter. So just because, she may look like you in appearance does not mean she is eligible to be the leader of, the greatest nation in the world. So when you hear something like that, I just get frustrated because it just goes to show, one, I don't think she's about to go home and do her research as to why Kamala should be the president of the United States. And two, it just goes to show that unfortunately some people really do vote based on identity politics. And that is just sad. If, Donald Trump's platform was presented by a black man Republican, I'm not voting for him because he's black. I'm voting because I agree with his policies.
The job of Donald J. Trump is to not only explain what he's going to do for the country, but what it is that she's done. And it's not an easy job because it should be supported by more than just Fox News and Newsmax on a TV-based level. And unfortunately today, that's still where a lot of people get their information. Even when you look at the clips that are going on around X or Facebook or whatever, they're television clips that are picked off and reiterated. So when people are watching these things, they're not getting the truth. And when you look at Trump and the job that he has, it's almost impossible to do it alone like he's doing it. And I don't know how he continues to do it with all that comes down on him. There is no better example on the failures of Kamala Harris than at the border. And we talk about it every single day. And yet every single day it continues to get worse. And it never gets tied back to her unless you're listening to Trump or Vance. There was a story out of California where a bus was actually hijacked by migrants. Now, when I say a bus, I don't mean a town bus or city bus. I mean a school bus. What's the details on that?
So this comes out of San Diego, so, the biggest city in California closest to the border. And the bus was en route to Oak Grove Middle School when a group of illegals tried to board the bus. And as reported by the superintendent, they basically were just trying to hijack the bus as their own while the students were on there en route to school. So essentially you have illegals who shouldn't be there in the first place. And not only are they now a hazard to the community at large, they are hazardous to school students just trying to get to school to learn. I believe they were arrested, but the fact that they were even eligible to hop on the school bus and take it while these kids are just trying to be safe and get to school is ridiculous.
Making matters worse, you take a look at what's going on right now in Denver, Colorado. Mm-hmm. In Denver, Colorado, the dangerous gang from Venezuela called TDA. We've talked about it on this program before. In fact, we've actually said they make MS-13 look like, something at Disney. There is new video footage. Maybe Ryan can get this video footage playing while I'm speaking. But there is new video here. You'll see that these gang members are now taking over basically a hotel where a lot of migrants are thought to be, right? I'm not sure if that's even the case. What's the deal on that?
It's an apartment building, so not even a hotel. And even what's more concerning, this is not an apartment building that is being subsidized for migrants. Like, these are just regular citizens. But what has essentially happened with this apartment building is that the TDA, Tren de Aragua, are using it as kind of like a drug commune to sell their drugs. And in that video, as you can see, they're all armed. They're basically
with long guns.
With long guns, yeah. I mean, you got handguns, but you also got long guns. And they have been just essentially patrolling that building as if it's one of their like HQs in Venezuela. In fact, someone that I had interviewed, if you remember, John Fabricatori, he was a former DHS agent. He just went in there to get a resident out because she was fearing for her safety and she was on the older side and had no one to help her. But essentially, the Aurora PD has done essentially nothing to get these guys out. So in a way, they have fully taken over ownership and are just patrolling this entire building as if they were in Venezuela doing it on their own. And this is crazy because it's happening on U.S. land. You would think, all right, get the cops in there, clear them out, and arrest them. But they're not even going in the step of clearing them out. They're just allowing them to really just have ownership of an apartment building.
And meanwhile, in California, going back to California for a second, on the governor's desk today is this bill, $150,000, up to $150,000, 20% of a home, to get this basically free down payment that is now going to be open to first-time home buyers who are also illegal aliens. So when you look at something like that, what happens is the message goes around the world that the United States is giving away $150,000 you could buy a home. And so the people, even if they don't qualify, they're not going to know that. They just see what's going on. They hear what's going on. Wow, America wants us in. America is losing its way. Let's get going. So all this is going to do, if he indeed signs it into law, all it's going to do is just push the next surge of illegal immigration into the country.
Of course. Look, I mean, TDA taking over a building, in an apartment building in a Democrat town, illegal immigrants taking over 2 different school buses for the sake of a joyride in a liberal state and essentially liberal city. And then in that same state, you got the governor basically signing and approving that $150K gets to go to these illegal immigrants because they get to classify as first-time home buyers. And their reasoning for it is because, in a layman's terms, the distinction of what counts as an immigrant is too complicated. So let's just make it universal, even if you are illegal. It's becoming clear that it's not even just Democrats tolerating it at this point. They are actively showing support that illegal immigrants, almost kind of like what's going on with the UK, are now in a 2-tier system. Someone who could be a hardworking, migrated here the right way, or just a natural born citizen has to go through these struggles. If it was me hijacking a school bus, I'd be arrested. If I was taking over an apartment building, I'd be arrested. If I wasn't a first-time home buyer, but I was second time and I really needed the help, I'd be rejected. Democrats do not care for actual natural born or legally immigrated citizens. Their prioritization at this point is those that came over the border illegally and aren't really here for the best interests of the country.
You know, I'm reading the comments here on the live feed on Rumble, and a guy, Steven, says the Aurora government, the Aurora being in Colorado where this apartment complex was taken over, is denying that it's happening. It's like we don't see it going on. They're telling you it's the next iteration of insult. The media won't tell you the truth, and the government is just going to sit there and continue lying to you. And because they don't fear you, they have no respect for you. And I go back to what I opened the show with. Nobody is holding them accountable. If you don't have at some point when you don't have anyone to answer to other than God, you feel as if you become God yourself and you're just doing whatever you want. And Stephen, if you say anything about this and you play the video, you're just a hater, okay? This is just a one-off. And don't worry, we're following this. No, you're not. No, you're not. To Dennis's point, if my family all of a sudden had long guns and we started taking over an apartment here in Indian River County, let me tell you something. Ron DeSantis, the sheriff, and everybody would be on our ass, and we'd be locked up, and our picture would be on the front cover of the paper, not only to say, hey, we got the bad guys, but also to set a precedent so this way nobody else does it. But in this particular case, whether you're handing out $150,000 to illegal aliens so they could buy a home, whether you're allowing migrants to just ransack and take over a school bus, or if you're allowing them to walk the halls with long guns, they're not even citizens of this country. They're walking around, knocking on doors, taking over an apartment complex and making it a drug haven, and it's going unchecked, unpunished, and uncontrolled. Well, then what you're doing is you're inviting chaos into your country. And the only thing that differentiates the United States from the third world is chaos. We don't have chaos.
Well, at least not to the fullest extent yet. I mean, we ran a poll today asking, if there is 8 years of a Kamala presidency, would you move out of the country? And the main feedback response is, well, at this point, where would you even go to? Because this mindset of allowing crime to just be rampant, specifically under those that shouldn't be here, has kind of just become global. I mean, I researched a report yesterday how in the UK, there was a Muslim man who attacked 3 women at a gas station. I mean, like violently attacked them because they weren't dressed up in hijabs, even though they weren't Muslim themselves. And the judge gave him probation, but didn't put him behind bars. And the main crux or reasoning to his attack was that he was misogynistic. It's because his religion is weaponized to such a point where it is almost evil and vindictive against women. But they want to go at the route of misogyny because it's a little bit cleaner than calling out radical Islam. So the truth is, where could you go at this point that doesn't have that awful mindset that says, yeah, you might be the natural citizen of our country, but we are going to prioritize those that came in 2 weeks ago and are causing a ruckus because reasons. It just doesn't make sense when you really think about it.
I mean, we're Catholics. I'm a Catholic. And, the Pope has always been something that Catholics cherished. But the Pope that we have in place is an absolute radical. He is beyond, he is as radical as Kamala Harris and, any other lefty you want to come up with. He lives behind one of the biggest walls you will ever see. The Vatican is surrounded by a wall. And this guy just has absolutely no clue about what the rest of us are dealing with, and puts out a statement that it is wrong to reject migrants, that it is literally wrong. And I don't get it where, it's the same thing. I mean, they're all hypocritical. They don't want, look at the video we played last week at the DNC with Steve Cortez, a former Trump ally in terms of working on his campaigns. Steve Cortez takes I think it was a Venezuelan migrant,
yes,
wherever he was from, takes him to the DNC, says, let me get you in. I'll get you into the DNC. But he couldn't go in. They wouldn't let him in at 3 different checkpoints because he didn't have ID and he didn't register. So Cortez is like, wait a second, you're going to allow this person into your country unvetted, unchecked, who knows what disease he's carrying, but you're not going to let him into your little party? Isn't that hypocritical? Isn't that contradictory?
Think of just, I'm glad you even said, just think of the layout you just mentioned with that video. You got the Venezuelan immigrant, illegal immigrant at that. And then probably about 30 feet away is the ruckus of the pro-Palestinian protests, which are all starting back up again as colleges go into session. And the DNC has a wall. It's got checkpoints. You need identification. In order to get to certain areas of the DNC, you need approval. And by the way, even if they were to get in, if you're one of those that are paid the top dollar, you're in the safety boxes with security. How is that not applied to our country? Because if you go to anywhere in Arizona or Texas at this point, or New Mexico or California, you don't have that same application. You're just allowed in. Imagine if we took what's happening at the border and threw it at the DNC. It would be actual chaos.
The betting line right now, and that's what I watch every single day, these polls. I mean, Fox News just did a poll saying that Kamala Harris is actually closing in on the swing states. that Trump has been leading historically. 4 of the 6 states have been going to Trump, but now Kamala Harris is basically closing in. I don't understand how that can be. She's not proposing anything that makes common sense. In fact, she now has surrogates going on different television programs, including CNBC. I wish I had this clip cut. And the people at CNBC, I mean, it's a financial channel. They know what they're talking about. And they say, wait a second, Kamala Harris is now looking to tax 25% of unrealized gains. Now, we did this at length last week, so I'm not going to go into the details on how that works again. But basically, I'll say it this way. If you bought IBM stock on January 1 for $100, and by December 31, a year later, it's $200, if you're not selling it, you don't have a tax to pay. You can't take a loss. You can't take a gain. But now what she wants to do is she wants to charge you 25% tax on unrealized gains. So you would have to pay $25 on the theoretical $100 that you made, and that's what that's what they want. Now, the next month, come around January, February, if the stock plummets because it's got a bad report and it goes down to $1.50, well, then what happened? Because you already paid tax on this. It is the most asinine thing ever presented. And the people at CNBC were saying to the guy, like, what are you, this is the worst thing in the world. And the guy just kept on pushing it, saying it was smart, saying it was great. And for the life of me, I can't understand how any person in the United States sees these things and says, this is a good thing. And so it comes back to, do you think Dana Bash tonight's going to say anything to Kamala Harris about her idea of taxing the unrealized gains? No way.
Of course not. And let me tell you, I have such a bone to pick with that lady in particular, because I know we don't have the clip, but 2 weeks ago she interviewed JD Vance, and for her first 3 to 4 questions, it was, remember when you made this comment about crazy cat ladies 5 years ago? And at one point, JD Vance kind of called her out and said, hey, are you going to ask me anything about policy, about the border, about inflation, and then also charges her with the fact that, Kamala is essentially hiding from any interviews or any press circuits. And even her first one now has to have, Walz as her emotional support pet. It's like, when are we going to actually get the real Kamala on a live interview? And the truth is we won't. And some Democrats at this point are so delusional that they're even supporting the idea. They believe that Kamala shouldn't have to speak out at all, that just her presence alone stands for what she is going to promote in her presidency, which is ridiculous. So Dana Bash, to your point, is going to ask the biggest softball questions of all time, and I even want to place the bet that anything that is a little bit big on policy is probably going to be answered by Walz, because one thing he's got as a talent is being a little bit of a Midwest sweet talker. Whereas with her, I mean, every clip I see of her speaking, I mean, she just was at an elementary school. She just did a pit stop at a gas station. It's awful. I mean, she's equating to Biden just with him being dementia. She kind of just sounds like she's maybe hitting the bottle on the campaign trail.
So just about 2 hours ago at 9:30 Eastern Time, this woman who is the press secretary, her name is Caroline Leavitt. She was on CNN. I'm just going to give you the interaction between the two of them as I'm reading it here. It says, CNN's John Berman fact checks Trump press secretary Caroline Leavitt saying Kamala Harris was never the border czar. This is what propaganda looks like and exactly how the left rigs elections. So here's what Caroline said. Kamala Harris was named the border czar. Berman returns. Kamala Harris was not the border czar. Caroline returns. Kamala Harris was named the border czar. She was appointed by Joe Biden. Berman says she was not appointed the border czar. I mean, CNN is going to take a fact. You can play the video where Joe Biden makes an announcement with Kamala Harris to his right. I remember even how they were sitting.
Yes.
And says she is going to go down. I'm putting this on her shoulders. She's going to figure out why these people are coming, and we're going to get it to stop. That's the border czar.
Of course.
And we still, to this day, haven't seen her really do anything at all about the border other than now say she's going to build a fence.
Yeah, and
Why didn't Joe Biden build a fence?
And don't expect any questions from Dana tonight about it with the border czar thing, because there's even one with her saying she was never the border czar. So they're really trying to reframe it, and it's hysterical to me because we have, if you're watching, we have J.D. Vance on the screen. If he was labeled the border czar and did absolutely nothing in a day or two's time, the media would be rifling after him, asking him, why hasn't he done this? Why hasn't he done that? So the double standard is just incredulous at this point. But even so, even if she wasn't labeled the border czar, she is the vice president. And one thing I have seen a lot in the last 2 to 3 days, specifically through, I think it was Politico actually today, J.D. Vance was speaking at a rally, and the headline was, J.D. Vance attempts to tether Harris to Biden. There is no tethering. When you see those campaign posters, what do they say? Biden-Harris, like she is his right-hand woman. It's been the case for 4 years. So what his policy decisions are, she usually advocates for or supports, and there's plenty of video evidence of it. So now this idea that she's never really been attached to Joe Biden, she's her own person, is just baffling and gaslighting to the highest extent.
Well, then on top of that, what they do is they just always try to make everybody sound a racist. I mean, it's still working. If God forbid you say something and it's a little off color, they're going to call you a racist. J.D. Vance, very frustrated because Joe Biden sat on a beach and tanned himself during the anniversary of which 13 service members were killed in Afghanistan during that total botched withdrawal that was just embarrassing, not only to the country, but to any American around the world. Just looked at that and said, oh my God, this is the United States. And Kamala Harris really hasn't had nothing to say about it. Nobody's ever been held accountable for it. She doesn't think there should be any kind of investigations or anything like that. And J.D. Vance is clearly pissed off about this. We've got a clip here of where he actually tells Kamala Harris to go to hell. Play it.
Kamala Harris is disgraceful. We're going to talk about a story out of those 13 brave, innocent Americans who lost their lives. It's that Kamala Harris is so asleep at the wheel that she won't even do an investigation into what happened, and she wants to yell at Donald Trump because he showed up. She can go to hell.
It's such a one-way street in the sense that if Whoopi Goldberg or anybody else that's on the Democrat side, be it in the media or be it in the administration, were to tell Trump to go to hell or call him a Nazi, they get complete coverage. No problem. Sounds good. We agree with you. Have at it. J.D. Vance tells her to go to hell, and all of a sudden now he's a racist and he's anti-woman.
Look, the big thing with J.D. Vance here, which is why I think it's great he's on the screen and what he just said, a while back we had talked about how much we would love Ben Carson to be VP. And if he were chosen, I would still be very happy with it. But the one thing that I think J.D. Vance has been able to accomplish in these last few weeks is that he's a bulldog. I mean, he will be righteous and vigorous like that, where he's going to call out Kamala for her BS. And he's someone who, since being named VP, he's been on the ground day one. He's not shying from interviews. I mean, he went to CNN with Dana Bash, and he's done plenty of other segments. So he's a real fighter. He's not timid like in the Mike Pence sense, and even Ben Carson, how he's a little bit more mellow. I mean, J.D. Vance is out there fighting, whereas Kamala, as VP right now, take away the campaign part, largely was absent through large swaths of the Joe Biden presidency. I mean, this isn't even new with her not sitting down and doing interviews. Even as VP, it was very scarce to ever get her in a real setting. It was always artificial, or it was always planned out or pre-recorded. So, I think what's important here is that you have someone like J.D. Vance. Yes, he's got the young blood, and maybe there was a little bit of the issues in the past with how he labeled Trump, but there has been no doubt for these last 2 months since he's been chosen as the VP, he has been hitting hard as hey, I'm going to help Donald Trump get to that finish line and hold the torch.
So I want to we'll wrap up the show with this. I want to give people a sense for what we are up against on the media level, because at the end of the day, the media always picks the president, even when they don't want to. In 2016, they gave Trump a ton of free press because they were trying to make him sound like a circus clown. They were trying to make him sound like he was some moron. And therefore, everybody's going to tune in. What's he going to say next? Put his live speech on. And then what was happening was he sounded like the rest of us. And that's how they elected him, even though they wish they didn't. And they have forever been trying to make up for it. But think about this for one moment. Here we are in this program. We didn't even talk about inflation today. We just talked about really migration, the gangs that are coming across, and the impact that it's having both, let's say, in California and Colorado, right? So there's a lot to talk about. We've got Kamala Harris on CNN tonight. We know she's going to get layups. The New York Times is arguably the biggest paper in the world in terms of reputation, and a lot of times it sets the conversation of what's going to wind up happening on that day or the next day. With all the different things that they can write about, what they're doing is they're focusing in on this battle that took place when Trump went to Arlington, to the cemetery, and tried to lay down wreaths in memory of the 13 service members that Kamala Harris and Joe Biden killed, in my opinion. Instead of focusing in on how Afghanistan was botched, instead of focusing in on how Biden, who's supposed to be the president, is sitting on a Delaware beach in a sand chair, and how Kamala Harris is floating around on a bus with Tim Walz talking about tips and not taxing them and taxing unrealized gains, what does the New York Times focus on? For 4 days now, it's been focused on the fact that there was a spat between cemetery workers and the campaign. I want to read, this is the top story on the New York Times. With all that's going on in this country, the top story, the New York Times. Let me just give you a few paragraphs. Title is, here's the latest on the presidential race. The Army on Thursday criticized the conduct of members of former President Trump's campaign in a statement about a confrontation at Arlington National Cemetery this week in which campaign staff clashed with a cemetery employee who was trying to enforce, basically, they didn't want them taking pictures.
Yes.
In case people don't know what it was, the Trump campaign wanted to take pictures, and the person said, no, you can't. All right, so that's basically what it comes down to. Participants in the Trump campaign's wreath-laying ceremony on Monday were made aware of the fact that you're not allowed to. It's prohibited. But an ANC employee who attempted to ensure adherence to these rules was abruptly pushed aside, the statement said. Consistent with the decorum expected at ANC, Arlington National Cemetery, this employee acted with professionalism and avoided further disruption. It added, this incident was unfortunate, and it was also unfortunate that the ANC employee and her professionalism has been unfairly attacked. So this is what they are talking about as being the number one story in the United States about Trump going to give respect to the people that Harris and Biden killed. And they're going to focus more in some two-bit argument between a worker, an overzealous worker, and maybe an overzealous camera taker. It's something that shouldn't even make a headline. It's not a
headline, no.
It shouldn't even make a headline. It should be a post on Twitter, and it goes by. This is the 4 days top of the fold on the New York Times.
I think that's something equivalent to taking a molehill and making it into a mountain, instead of maybe addressing the fact that Biden and Harris were nowhere near to be seen during that entire ceremony anyways.
And also keep in mind that tonight on CNN, it's not a live interview.
No, it's pre-recorded.
It's being recorded today at 1:45 in the afternoon. And then you know and I know anything that they don't like is going to be edited out.
Yep.
This is why the country is in shambles, because the media will not do its job. It's that simple. And this is why they want to take down X. This is why they want to take down Rumble. This is why they want to silence people like me and you and everybody else who's on the right, just trying to point out what's happening. They want it quieted. They want it silenced. They don't want it around. They're going to do everything they possibly can to get Kamala Harris to be the champion and to become the president of the United States, no matter what it takes. Last word goes to you.
It's a shame. I mean, I know we're not going to dive deep into it. They just arrested the Telegram CEO, Pavel Durov, And he's someone who's also a big free speech proponent with his platform, and the charges they're putting against him are bogus. So it's clear that it's a targeting of people who are advocates for free speech and speaking, freely and openly. And look, I'm hoping we get a 2016 situation where the media wants to bash Trump all they want, try to, do little headlines like the New York Times just did. But at the end of the day, I think, the American people can hopefully supersede that. I mean, just alone with these polls that they put out. I mean, I did one today with USA Today claiming that, Kamala's surging ahead and that they interviewed 1,000 people through telephone and text messaging or landline and phone call. And my thing is, can we ever get a really big audit on these media companies about who they're really calling for these polls? Because, if you're calling the same 1,000 childless cat ladies who love Kamala for each and every one, of course you're going to be able to sway your results to your favor, if you're even really making those phone calls. It's bogus, which is why I'm hoping from now until the election, we see more of those on the street interviews, those impromptu ones, and people speaking out about who they're actually going to vote for.
Listen, in New York, they just made it so this way they upheld where if you want to do a mail-in ballot, you don't have to give an excuses why it is that you have a mail-in ballot. You're just allowed to do whatever you want. So the number one way for fraud to be basically carried out in the United States is through these mail-in ballots. And the Democrats, no matter if it's on the state level or on the national level, don't give a rat's ass because they know it's the only way that they can get themselves really into office is through the means of what I believe is election fraud. And, Trump just put out a warning. It's supposedly coming out in his new book that the warning, that at least this is what is being reported, that he reports that if Zuckerberg gets involved again in the election, that they're watching him. If he tries to alter the election again in 2024, he's going to spend the rest of his life in prison.
Good.
Yeah. And so you look at somebody like Zuckerberg, who's now putting out letters trying to defend himself and throw the Biden administration under the bus for telling the truth, basically, that they wanted me to silence. That's what needs to be, that's what needs to happen. Here's my final statement of the day. If Trump wins this election, he cannot waste a single day on any BS. He has got to take these agencies and he has got to destroy them down to the very, very bone. And then he's got to rebuild them or just don't build them back at all because these agencies, at the end of the day, are destroying the United States of America. And we, the people, are just sitting here hoping that it will change at some point. No, it won't change at some point. You need a change agent, and that agent is Donald J. Trump. All right, that's it for Denny, Ryan, myself. We appreciate you being with us here today. Just a real quick thing for people on Rumble. Don't forget, if you want to get this show every single day, you could do so by becoming a Team DML member. Go to teamdml.com. It's only $30 for the entire year. Helps us stay in business. Don't also look over our new X account. We just opened it up, and we just started posting about last week. It's pretty popular. It's getting up there. And you can find us at x.com/trustdml. That's it for us, and we appreciate it, and God willing, we'll be with you here again tomorrow. Until the next time, may God bless you, our troops, these United States, and of course, Donald J. Trump.
Today's Team DML blessing goes out to Deborah Johnson.
Sounds good, Deborah. Run with it.
The Dennis Michael Lynch podcast every day by subscribing on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and download the DML News app from the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store for breaking news, merchandise, films, exclusive content, and Team DML. Get the Dennis Michael Lynch podcast every day by subscribing on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and download the DML News app from the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store for breaking news, merchandise, films, exclusive content, and Team DML.